Good evening, everyone. It's on or about 6:30, so I will call this meeting to order, and I'll ask everyone to please silence their cell phones or personal devices. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that Council approve the February 4th, 2019 Council agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest, and if so, please state the general nature thereof? There are none noted. Does anyone have any announcements this evening? Councillor Bateman?
Just for myself, Councillor Rowley, and Councillor LeBlanc, we attended the Pond Hockey Classic on the weekend, and proud to say our firefighters did us proud in the tournament. I'm not saying they won their games, I'm just saying they did us proud. They had fun and represented us well.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Well, our firefighters did us proud twice on Saturday because, of course, everybody knows we had a little incident along the railroad track, and our firefighters were diligently there securing the scene and helped everyone get things back rolling. It took a little longer than I'm sure the passengers on those Via Rail trains would have preferred, but I see that the railroad track is up and running again today and yesterday, so thanks to our firefighters, ×2 on Saturday. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The Council approved the Council Planning January 14th, 2019 meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The Council approved the Council January 21st, 2019 minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink and seconded by Councillor Bateman. The Council approved the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of January 14th, 2019 as presented. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. There is no statutory public meeting this evening. There are no delegations or presentations this evening, and we have received no citizens' comments this evening. So we'll move straight into staff reports. First staff report from Mr. Parkinson is with regard to the 2017-2018 management review results for drinking water quality management systems. And Mr. Parkinson, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I do not, Your Worship.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The Council receives the report from Patricia Skopulanis. Was that correct? From the QMS representative regarding the 2017-2018 management review results for the drinking water quality management system as information. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Our next report is changes to the drinking water quality management system operational plan. Mr. Parkinson, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I don't, Your Worship.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council receive the report from Patricia Skopulanis, QMS representative, regarding changes to the drinking water quality management system operational plan, and that Council endorse the cumulative changes to the drinking water management system operational plan. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. There are no notices of motion or motions. There is no unfinished business that I'm aware of. We'll move straight into the bylaws. The first bylaw is a trial bylaw to regulate the operation of off-road vehicles, and normally I would read the bylaw and we would vote on it, but I suspect there's going to be some robust discussion around the table, so let's just have the discussion. We can then, if we need to, look at our map and make changes to the map if that's what we want to do with regard to, I believe it's called Schedule B in the bylaw, which would become part of the bylaw when we pass it. So I'll open the floor to discussion with regard to the bylaw, and we can first let's have a discussion on whether we want to go down this road with regard to a trial bylaw. Although I think we did have that discussion, and the request was to bring this bylaw forward. So that's what brings us here today. So if there's any portions of the map we would like to exclude from this bylaw, I think now would be the time to have that discussion. Anyone? Councillor Anderson.
Mr. Mayor, can someone describe the map so everybody here is clear with what it's telling us?
I'll turn the floor over to Mr. McGee. Or Mr. King, did you have a comment?
I could make a comment while Mr. McGee loads the map,
Okay.
if I may, Your Worship. Through you, Your Worship, Alan, do you have a map of the entire municipality, rural and urban? The one you sent me on the computer?
On the side. There you go.
Yes, I have actually two maps, Schedule A for the urban, Schedule B for the rural area.
Okay, could you put B up? Okay. Okay, it doesn't come down far enough? There you go. Well, sorry, through you, Your Worship, that map scrolls up and down on the computer, but when you look at the map in its entirety, you get the northerly boundary of the rural area right down through to the lake shore, and you can see the urban area in the southern portion on that one map. Subsequent to the council discussion at the last meeting, I want everyone to be clear that when Mr. McGee drafted the original bylaw, and the bylaw as it was intended from the outset was to cover the entire geographic township of the municipality of Brighton, which would have included both rural and urban areas. And then we spent a month waiting to get comment from County and Northumberland on whether they'd allow utilization of the county road network for ATV, or what's the ORV usage, and that came back negative. So at the time that council directed Mr. McGee to bring the bylaw here, this has been an ongoing deliberation extending over almost the full 6 months that I've been with the municipality. To the extent that council may or may not wish to discuss a compromise, I felt that the easiest way to develop the bylaw, and I gave Alan instruction to delete any of the wording from the text that make reference to the entire geographic municipality of Brighton. This is a bylaw that would allow ORV usage on any lands identified on Schedule A attached here too, and the schedule has to be read in conjunction with the bylaw. And it's the same as a planner would develop a zoning bylaw, essentially. And you have a schedule that distinguishes or identifies the area that for which the bylaw is effective. And so it's on that basis that Alan has amended the bylaw, and it would allow that additional consideration by council tonight if in fact there was a fair amount of discussion in that regard at the last meeting, and you may or may not wish to avail yourselves of that opportunity. So that's all I have to add.
So before we do anything tonight, we're already exempt would be from use would be County Road 64 from essentially the canal or the Brighton border all the way up to Vito's, because Prince Edward Street is a county road. County Road 30 from Mount Hope Cemetery to the northerly Brighton limits. County Road 2 from John Street to the Quinte West border. County Road 2 from what I still call Pine Spring Farm, but nobody knows what I'm talking about anymore. Cheer Farms, from Cheer Farms to the Brighton border. County Road 41 from 30 to the Quinte West border, and County Road 26, County Road 26, the entire portion of County Road 26, County Road 25 from 30 to the Brighton border, and I'm missing one. County Road 21.
21.
County Road 21 from 30 to the Brighton border. So those are already exempt because they're county roads. The one I specifically wanted to point out was Prince Edward Street in Brighton is a county road. So would anyone like to exclude any other roads or streets in the municipality?
Your Worship, I just wanted to comment on, right now the county has not permitted the crossing on 26 and 30. If this trial bylaw is successful, we could approach the county in a couple of years and have access to on their county roads from a street or a road to a road. Right now, the only one I know, like through their county bylaw, is Percy Boom Road. I think they can go about 500 meters north, and then they can get off and go back onto a Trent Hills Road. So we can, and that's one thing they did give us an option for access, but being it's just a trial bylaw, there's no sense going to the county level, having it pass through a bylaw, and if the trial doesn't work out, then a lot of time's kind of been wasted. So there is possibility of opening up county roads, but like I said, 26 and 30 are just the crossings are a dead no, but they've not said no to any county road use for the future.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, you had your hand up.
I think you addressed what I was thinking there. Thanks.
Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. So just to clarify, there are still intersections there where they can cross the county road, just not drive on the county. Like you could cross from one side to the other, is what you're saying?
Yes, we don't have to go to the county
For
to
that.
cross at a 90-degree.
Exactly.
So what was Allison and Aranda Ways an example? ORV can cross without being part of the county bylaw.
But an ORV coming down Little Lake Road would stop at County Road 30 and not be able to go anywhere but back up Little Lake Road.
Well, there isn't, I forget what that road is. They can kind of cross and then go through a road allowance. I would have to pull up the map.
So they could go down Tees Lane, down the precarious forest, where the truckers sometimes try to go.
Well, yeah, Tees Lane, but they could go up Alexander Road, cross over at Tillings, and then there's a road allowance that'll take you right to the McDonald's gas station.
Good. Anyone else? I'm going to read the motion.
Excuse me,
Mr. King?
sorry, I do have something I want to say.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I thought you were
No?
moving on to somebody else. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mayor. It's truly unfortunate it's taken this long to come to some solution or resolution to this matter. And I think the action is tonight to get that done so everybody knows what's going on. I'm in favor of that myself. So I want to take a minute. So it looks like I'm going to have a minute because no one's got anything to say. So some of this may be a little bit repeated, but I've condensed it from the last meeting because there was a couple of points I didn't make clearly, and I think there's people here that might want to hear some of this. So, a question posted by Councillor Brian Ostrander last July was posted on Facebook and regretfully submitted as facts to our council and discovered not to be an accurate representation by Brighton ratepayers as it was completed by many from outside the area. After a lengthy process of identifying Brighton voters who responded to this Facebook posting, removing the influences indicated after doing that, 63% said no, it is not a good idea to consider allowing ORVs on the roads, or on our public roads. Our municipality then asked residents to comment on the proposed ORV bylaw. I believe we posted something in the paper. And based on those submissions, 62% of our ratepayers said, no, it's not a good idea to consider ORVs on our public roads. This sounds consistent with the Facebook survey, or call it a survey. It's not the proper word probably, because it wasn't a true survey. It was a question posted, and that was last July. And Bayshore resident Dave Cutler's letter last week to councillors also stated that Presqu'île Provincial Park Management have historically indicated that the roadway from the park gate to the residential area, not to the park, is considered part of the municipal roadway system. How will this be addressed in this area? Council should consider the wishes of the majority of taxpayers tonight. And I'm supporting the majority of taxpayers based on this. I met with acting OPP Detachment Commander Jeff Martin. Many of you probably know him, and at a police services board meeting here in January 23rd. He said that with the new bylaw, ORV travel will be restricted to the municipality north of the 401. We just addressed that question. There are no connecting trails south of the 401. Brighton staff, and the reports say that they have critical concerns for Christiani Road safe access if someone were to use that, but that's in Quinte West, and we can discuss Quinte West in a moment if you want. Staff Sergeant Jeff Martin stressed that ORVs are not meant to be driven on paved roadways, and further stated safety of pedestrians and riders need to be considered first in urban and rural areas of the municipality. Further, he said, liability today is a major concern for communities. I'll address that in a moment. Recently, 4 members of the Brighton Council attended the Rural Ontario Municipal Association Convention, ROMA, in Toronto. We heard repeatedly, many times over the course of 3 days, about asset and risk management for your community. I met with Sarah Runnels, Vice President and Associate Public Sector Risk Advisor at BFL Insurance Services at Roma. In brief, she told me that today councils must consider the risk it pertains to off-road vehicles. Insurance rates will more than likely go up for any community introducing a bylaw to allow ORVs on municipal roads and streets, she said. In the Brighton staff report, it stated that allowing off-road vehicles to use municipal roadways will have a certain degree of risk and could expose the municipality to the potential of liability. As an example of how I feel about your map there, the hamlet of Smithfield is a family neighborhood and it has 2 churches and a school with over 160 students, and growing as development continues, as developments continue everywhere in Brighton. I have been a resident in the past 4 years and I'm very familiar with the pedestrian usage. The majority of the hamlet has no sidewalks, so the shoulders of the roads are used extensively by residents dog walking, bike riding, bicycling riding, and general foot traffic. Careful, though, to safety considerations must be ignored. The downtown core and many of our urban subdivisions have their unique concerns as well, as you know. OPP Acting Commander Jeff Martin provided a map to all of you, councillors. It was by email. And this might come into play and might be something to be considered tonight to accommodate our ATV clubs or off-road vehicle clubs. So we can bring that up if you wish. We spoke of another option allowing this, and this was north of the 401. I'm not totally in favor of that. However, there are some, I understand there's quite a few people here from south of the 401, but it seems to be the people I talked to north of 401 were more in favor of this. I'm still concerned about the safety. So this would allow, this map shows that if you included Brighton in this, you could travel right basically from Port Hope to Belleville and beyond without, it's Brighton that's blocking, and you don't have county roads to use, but it is blocking the availability of getting to where you want to go. And I presume it's the beautiful trails that are north of here, because we do not have trails here in Brighton. And somebody said you have to get gas somewhere. Well, I know Wooler's up there. So I'll just touch on one more thing. Off-road vehicles travel out-of-town rides and clubs to reach their trails and destinations across the region without traveling through our urban areas. This will allow, coming from afar, they can come from, and they won't have to come through our urban area, and we won't have to pick away a map, and we can keep them out of the hamlets, at least south of the 401. Perhaps they want them north of the 401. And maybe that's something to consider. But I am dead set on the safety issue and our liabilities going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I just want to address the Facebook post that you mentioned. It was on my Facebook site that I posted it, and you did mention that. I did not represent that as fact. I know it was included in a staff report that we received last time we discussed this. I'm not sure staff were representing it as fact, but just as information for council.
It was posted, it was in our package. And
Yes, it was in our package, but I don't think anyone was representing it as a statistically
correct me if
significant
I'm wrong,
survey.
but
It was just for
It
information.
was in everybody's.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. For clarification on about the 401, as things sit, these ORVs would not be able to go across the 401 anywhere in Brighton. Is that correct? Is that? I heard Councillor Anderson say that. I just wanted a clarification on that.
Yeah, that's correct. They can't cross at 26 or 30.
Okay. So at this point, they wouldn't be able to go across.
Not without leaving the municipality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? Councillor LeBlanc?
Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson, for your thorough review of all the documents. I also read the mayor's, through you, the mayor, his post on Facebook. It said 72% in favor, 20% to 26% against. There was other people that voted from across Canada, but you must understand, Brighton has very little economic development to keep their young people here. So some of those people could possibly be people that are left Brighton, so when they come here on vacation, they could enjoy themselves. The OPP, Mr. Martin, I had a talk with him also, and I asked him, I said, is there two set of rules here in Brighton? You have 4 OPP officers that use their four-wheelers to plow their driveways, they're crossing roads, they don't have their helmets. They should probably be legal, allowed to be legal with a driver's license, insurance, the helmet and everything else. So they could do that. And then he didn't have an answer for me anymore, he walked away. Also, we're looking at the quality of life. We want the people from Brighton also to be, we say we want to help our families. We want to get our families out. Well, there's no trails here because nobody ever allowed them to have trails, or to have enjoyment, or to see people laugh, or joy, or have a smile. I found an article that was written in the 1990s when the first vehicles came out. And they said, oh God, if we pass this and allow this, it's going to be terrible. We won't allow to have the kids in our roads. We won't be able to allow them playing our streets. Well, we can't let them play in our streets now. And I was shocked to find out what it was. They were going to put a white line down the road that they use on tennis courts so they could divide traffic. And I bet you if we go to Smithfield, they have that white line today, 118 years later, to allow the traffic to go in each way. But in those days, 118 years ago, it was a huge thing that a white line was going to be put down the road to separate cars and weighty traffic, and it was going to be a disaster. When the first 20 cars came to the city of Detroit, it was going to be a disaster that these motor vehicles that were traveling 20 miles an hour were going to scare the horses, they were going to run over children, the mules were going to go, the mule trains were going to go, and it was never going to go anywhere. It was just, people didn't want to see anything happen or progress. But today, we have vehicles all over the place. I also read in the paper, they say ATVs don't have an airbag. Bicycles don't have an airbag. They're two-seaters. These little electric cars, little electric bikes that I see going around with their motorized vehicle with no mufflers, they're riding. They don't have airbags. I was at Roma too, and one of the things they said, the guy who invented the wheel was really good. The guy that invented the other three was a genius. So we could go there. You were at the same meeting I was. So also it has to do with liability and responsibility. The last council we were talking to people about having 12 and 15-year-olds getting hurt. 80% of those to 90% are hurt on their own properties. This is not for them. This is the people that are going to have insurance, helmets, going to be licensed, they're going to be approved, and they're going to have enjoyment. And they're going to be very responsible. I went to see 4 different towns. The one is Trent Hill on this map, which shows that Trent Hill isn't approved. Twice I've been there. The motorcycle, I call him an ATV, crossed the bridge. I followed him. He made his right signal. He went right. He was gone. The other one went left. He was gone, just this Friday. I talked to their bylaw officer. They did their trials, and they allow them all through town. They have not had one incident. So they made it permanent. They still haven't got one incident over a year. I went to, I think it's Crammy, the next town. I talked to the bylaw officer. They have it north of the 401. I asked her if they have any instances. She says yes. Only in the places where we don't have a bylaw. But we exclude them in the 401, and we're losing the economic, they're going to change it. They're looking at changing it so they can bring them to the Tim Hortons and the gas station. So but they'll have to do a route around to come down, which would they hit Telephone Road and come across. I went to see the OPP in the county. They have their map, and we would join on to that. We can go across. We can develop these trails. But first of all, we need data from the citizens of Brighton, the ones that are here. I don't really care of other townships and everything. We need the data for them, and we got to start having enjoyment. I met a guy on a 4-wheeler on Sunday, I believe, and he had his ice auger on it, and he was riding down Gosport. He had his helmet, he had everything, he had his plate insurance, but really, he couldn't do that. He should have taken his truck for a 100-yard drive to go on the ice hut. And he was driving nicely. He was doing his signals. I think he's here in the audience today, aren't you, Frank? Yeah. And I stopped him to talk to him. And I said, you're doing, but he's not, these are the things that we got to make our citizens legal and give them some type of enjoyment. It can't be always no and fear-mongering. To a white line from a tennis court that's going to divide transport, that was going to be a huge disaster for the United States and Canada, we adopted it. A matter of fact, I was driving on the 407, I was divided by white lines from a tennis court. So I'm in favor of this, only to get the data and to get the 8-month data that we need for this town. And that's where I am at. Because we got to be like the rest. We can't be an isolated shell. It doesn't happen in Brighton. We are Brighton, Wrightonians. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I don't think this anyone is fear-mongering. I actually take offense to that. We're just having a discussion about what's best for Brighton in the long run, and I think this is a difficult decision to make because we haven't had ATVs here ever allowed in this manner, and I think it's just good to have a discussion about the best way to go about it, and I think that's all that we're all trying to do. I'm curious to hear thoughts on whether or not to keep it just north of the 401. It's something that I would certainly consider. I know it does. I don't think that the AT drivers, they may come and get gas, but they're not going to go shopping downtown Brighton. Realistically, I don't think that's what this is about. So as part of the trial, I would certainly be willing to consider a trial that's maybe north of the 401, just because if it's more of a rural area. And I would love to hear what maybe some of the other councillors have to say about that.
Councillor Bateman.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's start with we've been talking about safety and concerns and that angle. If we looked at 2017 to 2018, and I'm going to echo what Councillor LeBlanc said. I'm strongly in favor of collecting our own data. When somebody comes before council as a delegation and they want to talk to us about a street where they think the speed is being surpassed on a consistent basis, we don't overreact and reduce the speed. We collect the data. Whenever somebody comes, we collect the data. So this trial will collect that data. But if we looked at the safety aspect and worried about safety, in 2017 to 2018, there was 4,258 hospitalizations due to cycling. There was 2,184 hospitalizations due to playgrounds. There's 160,000 car accidents in that same year. If you combine all recreation activities, i.e. skateboarding, scooters, playing baseball, walking, it's a combined of over 6,600 hospitalizations. We didn't ban any of those, we made them safer. So I'm in favor of, let's do a trial. We sink and swim on our decision. It's going to be up to the people that are utilizing that. If they abuse it and the data proves that it's not working, then we have our answer and the trial bylaw is done.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. At the last meeting when we discussed this, I made a lot of commentary. I'm going to make a little bit again, based on what Deputy Mayor Vink said. I think this group would be willing to compromise to maybe try just north of the 401. These vehicles aren't for coming into town to get your groceries. They're more for trail riding and the recreation out of the urban area. I would, once again, I am for this trial bylaw. I think with responsibility comes reward, and if my friends that live north of the 401 can prove that they're responsible and we don't have any issues, I don't know why we wouldn't move forward with this.
Thank you. Mr. McGee, have you had any conversations with the CFO with regards to insurance rates if we go down this road?
CFO, I'm not.
Chief Financial, Mrs. Whitfield.
No, I haven't.
Thank you. Mr. King, do you have a comment?
Through you, Your Worship, I haven't talked to Linda. I have talked to Linda, but neither one of us have contacted Jardine, Lloyd Thompson, or Cowan Insurance. I have dealt with ATV ORV bylaws in 4 or 5 other municipalities. The bigger issue, like insurance, is all based on probability. And right now, if you don't allow them, the probability of there being an accident and a lawsuit is pretty minimal. You allow the bylaw, the probability is that at some point, someday, there may be an accident. I don't know that your liability insurance would necessarily go up as a result of a bylaw that allows the use. The bigger issue for all municipalities, and it was the subject of an email today from the province, is joint and several liability. You know, somebody, joint and several liability, we might be found only 1% liable, but we end up paying 100% of the lawsuit, or the award that the court assesses. Thankfully, the Conservative government, the new Conservative government, have agreed to undertake a review of joint and several liability. If and when there's an accident, you're probably going to be named in a lawsuit. That's what lawyers do nowadays. They name everybody they can to try to round up as much money as they possibly can. But whether you're going to be found liable and end up realizing an increase in insurance premium, I really can't say.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Well, Deputy Mayor, and Mayor through you and Emily Rowley, the thing is on just saying just north of the 401 is something that's been done around here quite a bit. We will do the sidewalks the south. We won't do any work on the north. And just to say the south citizens are just as much citizens of Brighton as the north. So if a bylaw is going to go, it should include the south and the north, and not trying to make a divide between you're north of the 401 or south of the 401, because we're all Brighton citizens. There was they have a map. I think the Preston and the bylaw officer had another map they showed me where they would segregate the main core of the downtown, wouldn't be allowed, but the rest would be able to be used. I'm in favor of that, but I don't want to start separating north of Brighton and south of Brighton. We're all Brighton citizens. We're not north and south.
Councillor Rowley.
Regarding the insurance, I just want to make a comment. Whether it be an ATV that would have an accident on a municipal road, or a car, or a bike, or a motorcycle, would that liability not just work out the same way?
Right now, because the ORVs are not permitted on municipal roadways, we aren't liable if there's an accident because the law is being broken. Right. In the future, assuming council passes this bylaw, then we open ourselves up for a liability in the case of an accident.
As we would if it was a car
Just
accident.
like if there were a car accident today. That's correct. Yeah. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. King, for bringing up the AMO email today. It was quite to the point, and I hate to give this information, but it is a real concern to this community to be concerned about being fiscally responsible for all the people of this community. For us to take a hit on something like that, and what you were saying, it's not about the great drivers and the people that have all their documentation and their insurance. Those aren't the ones that are would be to blame at this. This is the people that do not have their insurance, and that these are the ones that we would be taking the full hit on a responsibility. If a pedestrian gets hit, they get hurt, or whatever. My concern is the people of the community do not want this in their community. Okay, and the other thing is, it is our responsibility to be fiscally responsible, concerned that we are not going to be responsible for injuries, and you just said it yourself. If we don't pass, you just said, if we don't pass it, our liability is, I won't say it's none, but it's next to none compared to what it could be. And I know and somebody could say fear mongering. Look up the definition of fear mongering. I'm not fear mongering. I'm giving you good information.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, please do not assume that anyone who owns an ATV doesn't wear a helmet, doesn't have insurance or plates. I would say most of the people that I know, you kind of implied that.
Comments are through the chair. Ladies and gentlemen, comments are through the chair. Carry on.
May I continue?
You may.
Thank you. I just want to make that comment that those who I know, and I would take offense, I drive an ATV, usually on the back, but we have an ATV and we are responsible and we use it for trails and we don't drive fast, we don't speed. There are limits as to how we can drive these things. You have to drive slower than the regulated speed limits. Cars should drive at regulated speed limits and they go quicker. Accidents will happen with anybody just because we're not irresponsible drivers, that's all.
Thank you. So where do we go from Mr. McGee?
Your Worship, if you allow me to read a page and a half of, I contacted Jessica Chapman from Ewer O'Dwyer to look at the liability and permitting off-road vehicles.
I'd rather you not read a page and a half, but if you could wrap it up into a few sentences, that would be great.
Basically, I said this last meeting, under Section 44 of the Municipal Act, we have a duty of care to maintain our roads. If we fail to maintain that duty, we could be held liable under the Negligence Act. It says, in the writer's opinion, the passing of the bylaw does not allowing the use of off-road vehicles on municipal roads does not attract any distinct or separate liability from already set provisions of Section 44 of the Municipal Act. In the writer's opinion, the passing of the bylaw pertaining to the use of off-road vehicles does not expose the municipality to any different or greater degree of liability. Rather, the municipality needs to ensure the fulfilling the duty of care set out in Section 44. The municipality should ensure that we have appropriate levels of service and formalized maintenance and inspection program to keep municipal roads, road allowances, and shoulders in proper state of repair. So as part of the implementation of appropriate policies regarding the maintenance inspection of municipalities, may wish to carry out an evaluation, ensure that there's adequate resources in which carry out the increased maintenance and inspections. As discussed above, is the writer's opinion that potential liabilities which is already set out in Section 44. In order to limit the potential for liability would be the writer's recommendation that the appropriate minimum standards for off-road use vehicles is fully understood by the municipality and municipality roads and procedures. So I mean, I guess one comment was thrown around how even if they drive down, say tonight, on a road that has not been maintained properly and they get an accident, even though there's not a bylaw, municipalities, there's liability there because we're not fulfilling a duty of care. So it's just a matter of making sure our roads are maintained properly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that my suggestion to have the bylaw north of the 401 is not about segregating the people of Brighton. It's just about starting off with this bylaw in a less populated, heavily populated area, that's all.
My comment would be that if we're going to have a trial bylaw, if that's the wish of council to go down that road, then we should not segregate the municipality at the moment, but wait to hear what the comments are over the driving season. And if it becomes necessary then to segregate areas of the municipality for a future bylaw, or maybe we decide to rescind, not go down the road if we get too many. But the purpose, of course, of a trial bylaw is to find out if this can work, and if it can work, where it can work best. By limiting this to just north of the 401, we limit all of those rural areas that are east and west of the urban area of Brighton. We limit the people who may be going out to ice fish down in Gosport or along the bay. And I get that there are people down in Presqu'île who don't want to see ATVs running the roads, and I don't frankly blame them. Those homes are tight together, and I wouldn't want to see any accidents happen down there. So maybe that's a road we want to create an exception for. Anyway, Deputy Mayor.
How about the downtown core as well? Would that be downtown core and Presqu'île? Would that be?
As long as by eliminating the downtown core, we don't eliminate a transit route from an area to an area.
Well, we need to look at the map.
Exactly. Councillor LeBlanc.
Could Preston show me that map again that you guys had suggested?
Basically, Preston and I were discussing, we were segregating an area. There's a high volume of subdivisions. So the area that we were speaking of is Main Street, down Prince Edward, and Prince Edward being a county road wouldn't be a big issue. Cedar Street to Harbor, and then up Ontario and then back to Main. So you'd have a little section there, and that's mostly, high residential subdivisions. There's Brighton by the Bay, Harbor Point.
So that would mean that someone who owns an ATV and lives on lives on Harbor Street, can't drive their ATV to another section of the municipality where it is okay to drive their ATV. They would have to trailer their ATV to an area of the community so they could drive it in an area of the community.
That's correct.
Yeah.
This is hypothetical.
I got it.
Mayor.
So my suggestion would be to exempt or include or exempt, I'm not sure what the right word is, but to put places like subdivisions in. So Brighton by the Bay, some of the subdivisions where we're looking at here, but not include Ontario Street. So that people can, if we're going to have a trial, let's see if it works or not. And people can traverse the municipality to get to where they need to go. Councillor Anderson?
I know the people in Smithfield won't want to be guinea pigs to a survey. So I think this council needs to make a decision whether it's right for the entire community or not. I've tried to look at it from that, and you're right, Mr. Mayor, that we shouldn't be segregating, Deputy Mayor, we shouldn't be segregating the people from anywhere. This is not, based on a lot of information that I've provided you tonight, and one more thing, it's right in the ATV the Institute of the ATVs, it's still called that, and it's in their safety guide, it's on the front page, the golden rule, and it's right on their front page. It says, never ride on paved roads except to cross when safely and permitted by law. So that's right on their front page. So I think this council needs to stand up and make a decision based on the people, for the people of the community, based on their safety and our due diligence, and make it now.
I'm prepared to read the motion as it's written, if that's what everybody wants to hear. Yep.
Sorry, little clarification then on the, under section 2.0, section or item 2.5, 2.6, the bylaw applies to all those lands within the municipality as depicted on A and B. 2.6 Schedule A and B forms part of this bylaw and must be read in conjunction with the bylaw. So that was, Mr. King, what you were trying to explain earlier?
Through you, your worship, if you want to exclude an area, you would identify it on Schedule A and B. So outline it in red or delete it. All lands with the exception of those outlined in red, or you'd have to have some, if you were going to try to restrict one portion of the municipality and allow it in another, you have to have something that would either depict it on the map or language that would direct you to that area when looking at the map. And right now it's allowing everything. Right, the way it's allowing everything because you've got maps showing everything everywhere.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Thank you, through your mayor. I like the thing that you brought up about Ontario Street and exempting the park, because I don't think we should have people going to the park with ATVs, with the animals and the beaches and everything. So that I would draw a line at the gate, they can't go into the park. Ontario Street, stay out of the downtown core. I'd be in favor of that, and if it has to go all the way, and people don't want to compromise, I'll vote for all of Brighton.
So the reason we're holding this discussion before putting a motion on the floor is so that we can actually identify places on the map if we want them excluded from the bylaw. So the suggestion from Councillor LeBlanc is that we exclude Presqu'île, the residential area, and the roadway into the residential area because it's been described to us as a municipal roadway, although some of us remain unconvinced of that. And the area on the map that was just identified by Mr. McGee being essentially Main Street, south along Prince Edward Street, including, and then west along Harbour Street, and then north along Ontario Street. Is that roughly that block of residential areas? So what we'd loosely refer to as the old area of Brighton plus the newer subdivision south of the tracks. Council? If we were to exclude those areas, would that be acceptable to everybody, or some?
If you're adding to the map, please add built-up areas like Smithfield, that's now become a development area. And I'm not saying any others. I'm gonna choose that one.
Okay, I'm going
Well, you're asking for input.
I'm asking for input on the two things I suggested, and then we'll come to Smithfield. So,
Your Honor, could I add one more thing? Pinnacle Street.
no, you can't add one more street. We can get there, though. Presqu'île, should that be exempt? Everyone agree that Presqu'île should be exempt? Yes? Presqu'île's exempt. Does everyone agree that that block of urban area that was described, Main Street, Prince Edward, Harbour, Ontario, that block should be exempt?
Yes.
Yes? Everyone agree? Getting yeses? Staff getting that? Smithfield. Smithfield, there's the map for Smithfield. Does everyone agree Smithfield should be exempt? Deputy Mayor.
With all due respect, we represent everyone in Brighton, so if we're going to start exempting Smithfield, then we have to start exempting all the other hamlets, and so I'm not going to agree to that at this point.
So does anyone else want to exempt Smithfield? No. Councillor Bateman.
I'm not saying, I don't want to exempt Smithfield, but I will say if we're concerned about Smithfield, I'd like to see sidewalks leading up to the school before I start exempting ATVs up there. It's been without sidewalks for several years, so I think that's the bigger concern here.
That's not up for debate tonight. We're just looking at ORVs tonight. Pinnacle Street, is that what you said, Councillor? Councillor?
I would suggest the subdivisions in and around the high school. Yeah, Pinnacle and Thompson Crescent. It's fairly developed. I would also suggest maybe another place.
Hang on. So,
Okay,
Dunnett Drive,
behind the White House.
Pinnacle North, Singleton, Alice. Well, it's not a subdivision, but
No, but yeah.
it's part of the built-up area that we're describing.
Yeah, well, that would be, yeah.
What about Hope Street, Lakeview Heights, Castle Ridge, up there?
ATV owners won't be driving around subdivisions regardless whether we exempt them or not.
Well, unless they live in the subdivision and they want to get out of their subdivision
Out
with
of
their
the
ATV to go
subdivision,
somewhere.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that's illegal under what we're doing. Someone who owns an ATV in Brighton by the Bay, I know it's an unlikely scenario, but someone who owns an ATV in Brighton by the Bay, if we pass this bylaw, cannot drive his or her ATV out of Brighton by the Bay to get it to a trail right now. Right? Okay, so as long as we understand what we're doing. So, I'm coming back to the question about Pinnacle North. The subdivision, you say the subdivision's in and around the high school, so that would be Pinnacle North, Dunnett Drive, Thompson, Henderson, Daniels. Anything else? We're kind of throwing darts at a map here, right? So, okay. As long as council agrees. Councillor Anderson.
Mr. Mayor, why don't you just make it the way it was presented earlier?
Because the discussion around the table is that we wanted to exempt
I know,
certain
but we're
streets.
going piecemeal. Maybe this should be done in a different format. This is in a little bit more analytical than just picking off a map. It's my opinion, that's all.
That was my original suggestion, that we just leave it alone and see what the trial does.
Well,
But
let-
then people wanted to exempt certain areas of the community.
But perhaps they want to rethink this after looking at how challenging it is to be deciding everybody's fate here. Just decide the community's fate.
Councillor Bateman.
I'm in favor of leaving it the way it is, and let's collect the data. I don't think anybody living on Castle Ridge is going to fly down from there, down to the corner store. If they're going to go ATV, they are going to hook it up. Let's do the trial, collect the data, and then deal with the data after the fact.
That was, yeah, good, thank you. Anyone else?
Good decision.
Okay, so nothing will be exempt,
Just one point.
except Presqu'île. So now is Presqu'île exempt? Presqu'île is still exempt. Presqu'île still exempt? Okay, so only Presqu'île is exempt.
And that's where the numbers we looked at, having the blanket or just rural only, when we took out Bayshore Road, the numbers went up to the 70% for...
Because we got about 25 responses from Bayshore Road. Yeah, I understand. I know how to skew a survey too.
And the bylaw does, under Section 6, provide monitoring, so every month, I'll conduct OBP and hand it off.
And if need be, halfway through this trial period, we could stop it if we needed to, if things, if things get out of hand. Although, in discussion with Mayor Crate from Trent Hills, they've had no issues at all. They had one issue, but it was with an underage driver, so it would have been in force and effect today, right? So that's the problem. I'm going to read this motion. And you can all decide how we go move forward. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a trial bylaw to regulate the operation of off-road vehicles on municipal highways within the municipality of Brighton. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Anderson.
I just ask for a record and vote on this, please.
Sure. And when I pass it over, I will offer the recorded vote to the clerk, okay? Is there any further discussion? We understand that Bayshore Road and Presqu'île, whatever it's called, will be exempt from this. So recorded vote is conducted by the clerk's office and is done in alphabetical order according to the councillor who requested the recorded vote, which is Councillor Anderson.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
No.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
No.
and Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
It has been carried.
Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to reports of advisory committees of council, reports and minutes and council reports. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson and seconded by Councillor Bateman that council receives the minutes from the Codrington Community Association meetings of August, October, and November 2018 as presented. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. We have no reports or minutes of statutory committees, boards, or external agencies. We'll just give these citizens a moment to vacate the chamber. We have no reports or minutes of statutory committees, boards, or external agencies. We move on to correspondence, direction, endorsements, communications, and petitions. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council receive the financial request from the Courageous Companions and refer to budget deliberations. Is there any discussion? We need to leave the door open. Yeah, it's a meeting open to the public. The door has to stay open. Yeah. Nope. If they get too loud, we'll kick them out. It's all good. Do you need me to read that again? All in favor? Opposed? The motion's carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council proclaims Saturday, April 6th as Gift from the Heart Day in the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Deputy Mayor Vink. The council receive the Town of Georgia resolution concerning Schedule 10 of Bill 66, Restoring Ontario's Competitiveness Act. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Move on to FYI correspondence. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council received the correspondence from the Ontario Farmland Trust input on the proposed Bill 66, Restoring Ontario's Competitiveness Act 2018 for information. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council receives the correspondence from David Green regarding water issues in the Brighton by the Bay development. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council receives the AMO policy update, new policy resources available for a new year as information. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. I'll now open the floor to question period. Questions are with regard to items on the agenda and may be asked by anyone in the gallery. Going once, twice, no questions. Thank you all very much for that. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley. Actually, we'll take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll be going into camera afterwards. So we'll take a 10-minute recess. Thank you. Motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Deputy Mayor Vink. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw confirming the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Council meeting held on February 4th, 2019. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Those opposed, the motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that the February 4th, 2019 council meeting adjourn at 7:52 p.m. Any discussion? Those in favor? All in favor? Those opposed? The motion's carried.